Hi, semi-serious talk time, because things are not okay over in my corner. To quote a recent favorite song of mine, I feel like garbage. You may have clicked on the title of this video being concerned, confused, curious, everything with a C. And people who have been subscribed to me for a while might be looking at this and being like, you hate talkie videos, why are you making basically a video essay? So before I get into the topic of this video, I have to tell you a little story about Colossal Connie's 2025. I went up a couple weekends ago now, it was, and some pretty cool things happened. I competed in the masquerade, which is something that I really wanted to do this year. I got a signed poster from Jonathan Young and Caleb Hiles. I got a lot of compliments on my Keyleth cosplay, which I worked so hard on. I actually met a subscriber in real life for the first time and was very taken aback by it, because I don't think I'm big enough for those kind of interactions to happen, and yet it happened. And I know that all sounds like it's a really fun time, but I actually had a major dissociative episode during the day. It was really overstimulating, and I basically shut down by the time I got to green room, and I am only starting to remember some parts of the day that I completely blocked out of my memory because I was just so out of it. I'm actually kind of choked up talking about this and trying to do these takes because it's weird to look back on that and say I had a quote-unquote bad con experience. I literally woke up the next morning and felt worse than I ever had after one of those, and I just went home and slept for the rest of the day pretty much. And during the time that I had to recover the past couple of weeks, I've just been thinking about cosplay culture, convention culture, and the toll that it takes on our bodies and minds. And I guess in an attempt to come to terms with what has happened to me, I wanted to make this video analyzing those aspects of the culture to just evaluate where we stand and what we can do better about these issues, because I know that these things happen. People are going to have emergencies, little episodes like that, but I just don't know if the resources are in place currently for them to be handled appropriately in our little subculture. I feel like this is something that isn't talked about seriously enough. I had a hard time finding outside resources to cite and quote in this video. So most of my data comes from a survey that I made myself and sent out to my social media following and friends. 29 people took it, which is 29 more than I thought that I was going to get. So I think that's an okay sample size for my platform, but it's not representative of everybody. Still, I think the little bit of data that I do have represents a fair amount of positives and negatives that we need to address, and some people actually sent some stories when I asked for them, and all of those responses are going to be anonymous. If it seems like I'm looking over here a lot, this is where my laptop, where all of my notes and the survey are, so that's why. And also, it looks like somebody else took the survey 15 minutes ago, so now I have an even 30. So if I say a number incorrectly, it's because I took my notes right before this person took it. Thank you, kind stranger, for making it an even number. First thing I wanted to talk about is our physical health, because our bodies go through a lot of stress during super long convention days, because we'll be in heavy-ish costumes walking around for multiple hours at a time, often without breaks. And obviously, that's going to take a toll on the average person's body, so you've got to take care of this thing. Arguably, the two most important things you can do to keep your body in check while you're at a convention is eat and sleep. According to this survey, about 40% of participants spend between 7 and 10 hours at any one given convention day. And I'd say we're taking care of ourselves fairly decently. Over half get 4 to 6 hours of sleep and at least 2 meals a day, which is better than nothing, I will say that. There is the very concerning 7% who say they don't eat any full meals during the day, and I just want to say, how? I understand that there are probably multiple different factors that go into why people don't eat. For example, when I asked about possible solutions for this, people said they want more affordable snacks and more diverse snacks, saying that they feel that convention food and regional food is super limited and too expensive. And I really do think that this is an issue that needs to be addressed with convention centers. Still, you should not neglect eating. If your tumbly is rumbly, you can't just let that go. Packing a lunch or having easy microwavable meals in your hotel room is a very easy solution for this. Plus, you're buying groceries ahead of time, so you're spending less money at the con. Not taking proper care of yourself can lead to you getting sick or seriously hurt, but sometimes things just happen. When asked about illness and injury, roughly 50% of participants said they attended a con while sick or injured, and it's an even half and half split on who was sick and who had an injury. Exactly 50% have gotten injured or sick during the convention. Some examples I gave are costume-related injuries, things like food poisoning, catching viruses from other attendees, things like that. Somebody left a story about how they fell off of the train leading to the city where their most recent convention was in and had an awful injury on their leg. And later on, this person messaged me and said, I have an addendum. I just found out that I had sprained my ankle from that fall, so I did a 3-day convention on a sprained ankle. And it feels so bad for this person. The most common answer that I got when I asked what conventions could do better to keep their attendees healthy is free water stations. Hydration is so important. Electrolytes are important. Water shouldn't have to be $4 a bottle, in my honest opinion. I have yet to go to a convention that doesn't have free or relatively cheap water on hand, but I think it needs to be a more widespread thing if so many people are calling for this to happen. Another one that I got a lot of responses about is just don't go to cons if you're sick. I'm surprised that in this day and age especially, that's not a more common thing. Like, we just came off of a whole pandemic that we're low-key still in, and people will still go to huge events like this with more than just a slight case of the sniffles. The consensus is if you're not operating at 100% physically, do not go, but if you do feel good enough to go, wear proper protection. Do not risk getting yourself more sick or getting your fellow attendees sick. Someone also mentioned getting vaccinated against things like the flu and COVID. Slight tangent, it's also kind of weird to me that people look down on those who still continue to mask all the time, be it voluntarily or because they have some kind of immunocompromisation in their system. Like, what is wrong with you? Don't judge people. I would be absolutely remiss if I did not go through this section without mentioning disabilities. The amount of horror stories that I've heard from disabled attendees about their conventions not being ADA compliant or not having accessible first aid for them and many other such things is absolutely heartbreaking to see, because that should just be commonplace. So overall, convention centers and the events themselves need to do better with having accommodations and ADA policies in place, or whatever international variation of the ADA, which stands for the Americans with Disabilities Act, that other countries have in place. I don't want to make that sound USA-centric. One participant gave me an example of something that should be more common, and that is having some kind of indicator of a disability on your badge that allows you to have, say, an ASL translator or a front row seat at panels for hearing loss, vision loss, things like that, or a seat near an exit in case some kind of health-related issue comes up. I can't think of specifics right now, and you need to make a quick escape. Another thing in the responses that really stuck out to me, this person described being disabled and being a cosplayer that goes to cons frequently as a constant balancing act, because there is so much that they have to do between, like, pacing themselves, having medications, so they can, direct quote again, enjoy the experience without feeling wiped out or sick afterward. And I so get that. We all have diverse bodies with equally as diverse needs, and having to stop and take care of ourselves should not be looked down upon at all. I feel like if I say the phrase cosplay and mental health, the first thing that's going to come to people's mind is the burnout cycle. And yes, I agree, that is absolutely an issue that I will touch on in this section, but I want to talk about it a little more broadly first. The cosplay community is very neurodiverse. I would know, I'm in it, and I am neurodivergent. And everybody's brain reacts differently to different stressors. And conventions, there are a lot of people in a tiny space, usually tiny space. So it can get pretty stressful and pretty overwhelming pretty fast. In fact, when asked what the biggest stressor was at a convention, the majority of people responded general overstimulation, meaning there's just too much noise, too much people, sensory overwhelming. I've been there so many times. This is a very common occurrence with everybody that I've spoken to. In order, the next most common stressors are finances, costume-related things, and timing or sticking to a schedule. That last bit leads me to talk about something that I have dubbed cosplay overdoer syndrome. I kind of stole this title from something I learned about in music school called vocal overdoer syndrome, which is someone who is super talkative and tends to overperform when they sing to the point that it injures their vocal cords. And the definition that I wrote down for it is a cosplayer who overbooks themselves and does so many activities such as panels, meetups, and costume changes per con that it fucks with your psyche and wears you down to the point of burnout over and over again. Feeling the need to make all the costumes, go to all the events can be really overwhelming. Most people in this survey keep their activity schedule pretty light, the most common being 3 to 5 activities per con day. I also asked about FOMO, or the fear of missing out, and who specifically influences that for people. Only around 40% of people say that they are influenced by FOMO, and more people are influenced by their friends than, say, a popular cosplayer or social media influencer. And I feel like this factor is what played into what led to my episode at CCE. The whole reason that I caved and decided to go for just that one day is because it felt like everybody was there, and even though I did want to, I knew that it wasn't my favorite con to try to navigate mentally, and I suffered the consequences for it. So this serves as a reminder to both myself and to others to just slow down, chill out. Don't do the thing if you know you can't handle the thing. Even when setting all of these precautions and boundaries in place, sometimes your brain just decides that it's gonna be a bad day and you're gonna feel anxious or slightly off kilter. Of the people surveyed, 53% have had to leave a con due to poor mental health, and of that percentage, 20% of them did not return to the convention. They can be tricky environments to navigate when your brain isn't operating at its fullest. In the survey, I asked for some coping skills that participants use to navigate these little hiccups that can happen sometimes, and they all kind of went around the same couple of topics, so here's what we got. Finding a quiet space to sit or pace around, colloquially known as floor time, having a snack or a drink, putting in earplugs or noise-canceling headphones, breathing exercises, regrouping with friends, especially ones who know your needs. And if the convention has a designated quiet room, going there. Some of you might have listened to that whole section and be like, damn, this cosplay stuff is really draining. And it absolutely can be, but most of the stories that I got from participants about their mental health was all positive. This one especially stood out to me, and a lot of people echoed this sentiment. First sentence of this reads positively, being in cosplay and around other cosplayers has greatly helped me cope with social anxiety, because everyone is some degree of nerd, so I don't need to be afraid of looking too nerdy. They also state that it creates a positive feedback loop, which makes everyone around more social, and I think that's such a very wholesome thing. If we continue to be positive and uplift each other, then conventions will be a much more mentally stimulating space than draining. And I think we as a community can absolutely work on that. I wanted to dedicate a part of this video to the social aspect of the cosplay community, both online and offline, and I want to start it with what might be my favorite quote that I've gotten in this entire survey. Would it be controversial if I say TikTok is to blame? Absolutely not, bro. Both the cosplay community on social media and social media itself has drastically shifted so much in the past 5 years that it's hard to deny that there has been any positive or negative effect on the community. I'm going to focus on the negative because I feel like even though it's been addressed a million times, many people brought up their concerns about this. My personal concern is that social media directly plays into the poor physical and mental health in con culture nowadays. As I was collecting the data and doing the research for this video, I got a Instagram reel on my feed. I was gonna say TikTok, and it's an Instagram reel. Probably was reposted from TikTok though, that I can't find again. That was something along the lines of me and gang when there's an 8-hour con day with no sleep, no meals, and a wig that's giving us a headache, and they were all like, yay, yippee, woohoo. And I think that this hyper glamorization of the negatives of con culture make it seem like it's an appropriate thing to do when really it's a little concerning if you're excited about that part. And I do understand that it's a joke, but somebody out there is going to take that seriously and be like, oh, this is normal, when I really don't think it should be. A fair amount of people who participated in this survey either post on social media regularly or are content creators professionally, semi-professionally, as a hobby. So I wanted to talk about how it seems like everything has to be content and you can't put your phone down. Of the content creators that participated in this survey, about 38% make taking videos, vlogging, taking photos, and doing promotional media a priority at conventions. And 1/3 of those do so even if they aren't a guest or getting compensated for it in some way. And not to sound like a stereotypical boomer, but sometimes it is the phones and you should put them away. If you spend so much time focusing on what the right angle is or how many people you're stopping to interview or take photos of, then you might lose sight of the part where you're supposed to have fun, especially if you are not making money off of content creation. If you are a photographer with multiple clients, or if you're a guest of the convention who has been told to make certain content, then yeah, go for it. Get as much in as you can and make your bag. But if you aren't getting any money, then you can slow down. You're allowed to not have everything perfect. You're allowed to not vlog everything. This is also a bit of a reminder for myself. I got some very saddening statistics in a couple of questions that I wanted to give their own section. I gave 4 options for this question. Half of it is whether you attend cons alone or with friends, and the other half is do you spend your time alone or with friends. The majority of people attend conventions with friends and do things with the group of friends that they came with, but a concerning amount, I believe about 38%, spend at least some of their time alone. The real kicker for me was the last question that I asked, and it was simply, do you feel like you are welcome and included in your local cosplay community? 50% said they were unsure, and 6.7% said no. This, frankly, should not be happening, and it makes me really sad, because it shows that our sense of community, we call ourselves a community, but actual community work is not there and withering away. I got so many different anecdotes about how they feel that the community around them has changed, about how it's become more consumerist, more of a popularity contest, more about who is more skillful or attractive. I've had some people talk about having stress nightmares because their cosplays aren't perfect or because the people around them think they're doing something wrong. I was given stories of bullying, body shaming, racism, stalking, and harassment. Absolutely none of this is okay and should not be tolerated and should not be as normal as they are. One person gave me a story about their experience with harassment at a convention and then linked this resource that I have never seen before called the Cosplayer Survivor Support Network. And it is an international organization that analyzes cons' harassment policies and makes sure that there is a safe and proper avenue for people to report behavioral incidents at conventions. And it was very thorough, and I think that every single event should look at this website and reevaluate their policies on things like bullying, harassment, sexual assault, racism, the whole shebang. I will link this in the description so you can check it out because it's absolutely worth looking into. When I was looking around videos for this part of the essay, I came across this really good, in-depth, thorough video by fellow YouTuber Haryana Hook. I will also link that in the description because it is absolutely worth the watch. I looked through her channel and I looked at her Instagram, and in one of her infographics, she wrote this quote that really stuck with me and I think really encapsulates how I am feeling about all of the data that I've collected, so I'm going to quote her here. "You are actually supposed to care about people you are in a community with." It's so simple and yet so powerful, and I don't understand how other people don't get that. If you are in a community, you need to look out for each other. And you need to make sure that all of these awful incidents don't happen, that you uplift each other, protect each other, and just check in every once in a while. I struggle with it too, but ever since collecting all this, I've been trying to make an effort to do better, and I think we all can make an effort to do better, because where we stand right now kind of sucks. So, what do we do about all of this? The way I see it, it's partially on conventions and organizations and partially on us as a community. A lot of the things that conventions can do, I already have mentioned in this video. Things such as the water stations, the quiet rooms, better affordability for foods and honestly tickets, improved accessibility. Two other good ones that I got were to stop overcrowding and overselling tickets, because this will just reduce the amount of overstimulation that happens, and overfilling convention spaces is a danger, honestly, not just for mental health, but for physical health too. I think there was a story a few years back about someone getting trampled at Anime Expo, and yikes. And this one kind of overlaps into our side of things, and that's to host more community-focused events. Things that are less about going to artist rally and shopping and just watching industry panels, and more making friends, interacting with other people, being silly, goofy, cringe. The general consensus on our end is to just continually look out for each other, call out gatekeeping and bullying, uplift and support your fellow cosplayers. Check in on people, make sure they aren't overexerting themselves. Comment nice things on social media, talk to each other. And overall, just be a kind person. You never know when a small interaction can make somebody's day. My final takeaway on everything that I gathered through this research is that no silly anime convention is worth hurting yourself over, and at the end of the day, it's on this entire community to keep the community happy and healthy. We have to know our limits. We have to be supportive of each other through the highs and the lows. Stuff like what happened to me at Colossal East is common, and we should have the resources in place to support those who are struggling, and the sympathy to not let them go unnoticed. Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to this very different video. It's my first foray into video essays, I guess, so it's a little bit messy and I may have misspoken, so I'm going to really encourage you to comment. Keep the discussion going, point out things I missed, share your own anecdotes, critique how I presented this information. I really want this to keep going and be talked about more because I feel like it should be talked about more. And I don't know if I'm necessarily the right person to talk about it, but I talked about it, so now it's out there. And you can hit the other buttons too, like and subscribe and share and all that. And yeah, I'll go back to silly crafting, but this is just something that was really weighing on me and I wanted to get out into the community. Thank you.